I couldn't shake what happened that night. I kept replaying it over and over in my mind, the way the figure had stood motionless, watching me through the window. That unblinking stare, like it was waiting for me to make the wrong move. There was something about it that felt wrong, unnatural. Almost like it wasn't just watching me, but studying me. I was beginning to wonder if Linda's warnings had more truth to them than I cared to admit. But I needed answers. I couldn't live in fear, trapped in this place with no understanding of what was truly out there, what had been lurking in the woods, and why everyone was so terrified to talk about it. The next day, I started to search for clues. It wasn't much, but I began by scouring the old files in the station's research lab, hoping to find something, anything, that would shed light on the creature Linda had mentioned. But what I found only made things worse. In the back corner of the lab, there was a shelf full of dusty old journals and reports. Most of them were filled with mundane information, weather patterns, animal behavior, measurements of the local terrain. But as I flipped through one particular journal, I came across a series of entries that made my stomach drop. The handwriting was frantic, erratic, like someone was trying to get the words down before it was too late. "It's here again," one of the first entries read. "I hear it moving outside at night. The others think I'm imagining things, but I'm not. It's watching. I can hear it breathing. It doesn't feel human. It doesn't feel like anything from this world." The next entry was even more disturbing. "We're not supposed to talk about it. No one tells the new ones, but it's been here for longer than any of us. We keep the rules to stay safe, but the creature, it knows, and it will find us one by one until we break." I felt my breath catch in my throat. The entries were dated from years ago. There were no names, no identifiers, just frantic notes warning about the thing that lurked outside. And then, the last entry sent a cold shiver down my spine. "Tomorrow is my last day. I'm going to break the rules, leave after dark. If I don't make it back, it's too late for me. But maybe someone will listen. Maybe they'll understand that there's no escaping it." The pages stopped there. The last note was smeared, like someone had been in a hurry or maybe in a panic. The journal ended abruptly, and that was all. No more entries. No more clues. I slammed the journal shut, the sound echoing in the otherwise silent room. I tried to steady my breath, to force my mind back to logic, but it was getting harder. The pieces were beginning to fit together in a way that I didn't want to believe. Something was out there. Something was waiting for us to break the rules. I needed to confront someone about this, to get more answers, but everyone seemed to avoid the subject. Whenever I tried to ask, people would get quiet, glance at the door, and quickly change the topic. Even Steve, the field worker who spent the most time outside, seemed to know something was wrong. That evening, I decided to take a different approach. I wasn't going to get answers by asking the others. They were too terrified to speak. I needed to find out more for myself. I waited until everyone had gone to bed. The outpost was quiet, just as it always was when night fell. The silence was suffocating, the kind of silence that presses in on you, that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. But tonight, it was different. Tonight, I couldn't just sit there waiting for something to happen. I gathered my courage and headed to the storage room where I had seen the locked door earlier. It had been locked up tight, but there was a key somewhere hidden in the outpost. I wasn't sure where, but I was determined to find it. After a few minutes of searching, I found it. A small, rusted key hidden in a drawer in the office. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached the door. It felt wrong, trespassing like this. I had been warned, but the need for answers, the need to know what was really happening, was too strong to ignore. The lock turned with a sharp click, and the door creaked open. Inside, the room was dark and dusty. The air smelled stale, like it hadn't been opened in years. It looked like just another storage room, filled with old equipment, spare parts, and crates.
but there was a corner at the back where a large, heavy tarp covered something. I walked toward it, my steps hesitant but determined. My hand shook as I reached for the tarp, but I pulled it back anyway. What I found underneath made my stomach twist in knots. It wasn't just old equipment, it was a journal. And not just any journal, a series of them, nicely stacked together. The first one was labeled in bold, worn letters, "The Watcher." I opened it carefully, my fingers trembling. The first few pages were filled with the same type of frantic writing I had seen in the other journal. But these entries were different. They were more detailed. They described experiments, observations. The thing out in the woods, the Watcher, wasn't just an animal. It wasn't just some myth or legend. It was a creature, something ancient, something that had been there long before the outpost had been built. As I flipped through the pages, I could hardly believe what I was reading. The creature wasn't just a random predator. It was tied to the land itself, to the mountains. The journal spoke of rituals, of a dark pact made between the workers and whatever was in those woods. The rules were there to keep it contained, to prevent it from crossing over into the outpost. And when those rules were broken, when someone left after dark, it was only a matter of time before the creature claimed them. The last journal entry sent a cold wave through my body. It was signed, but not by anyone I recognized. The handwriting was different from the others. The words were simple but chilling. "I've made a mistake. It knows I'm here. I can hear it now. It's coming for me." I slammed the journal shut, my heart pounding. I wanted to run, to scream, to tell someone, anyone what I had found. But I knew deep down that no one would believe me. And worse, what if it was already too late? What if the creature was already aware of me?
The weight of the journals hung heavy on my mind as I walked back to my room. Every step I took felt like I was walking deeper into a nightmare. Each one a reminder that I was surrounded by a web of rules, secrets, and things that no one dared to acknowledge. The more I learned, the more I realized I wasn't just a researcher in a remote outpost anymore. I was a prisoner in a cage of rules that I had no power to break. And that terrified me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The images of the journals, the warnings from the past workers, the creature in the woods, they all circled in my mind, gnawing at me. I knew I should have stayed inside, obeyed the rules. I'd heard the whispers, felt the fear in the air every time the sun dipped behind the mountains, and still I couldn't shake the urge to see the truth for myself. To prove that the creature was just a story, just a terrifying myth created to keep the workers in line. But as I lay there in the darkness, something inside me clicked. The rules were never meant to protect us, they were meant to contain it. The creature had been here long before any of us, and now it was only a matter of time before it realized I was breaking the rules, just like the others had. But there was one thing I couldn't ignore, one thing that gnawed at me harder than anything else. If the creature had been here all this time, why hadn't anyone been able to leave? Why hadn't anyone told the truth? I knew the answer, of course. The rules were a cover. But the deeper I dug, the more dangerous my questions became. So, that night, as the darkness pressed in from every side, I decided to break them. I wasn't going to just sit here anymore, following the rules that were keeping me locked in. I had to know what was in the woods. I had to see it for myself. I waited until I was sure everyone else had gone to sleep. The outpost was eerily quiet, the silence pressing in from all sides. The snow outside was thick, a blanket of white that stretched across the world, isolating me further. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it ever had before. It felt like every second was stretching, pulling me closer to whatever waited beyond the safety of the walls. I grabbed my jacket, my breath shallow, my heart racing with anticipation and fear. I knew what I was about to do could mean my end, but I didn't care. Not anymore. I had to see the creature. I had to prove I wasn't just another victim of superstition. I reached for the door, my hand shaking as I turned the handle. The cold air hit me immediately, sharp and biting, but I didn't hesitate. The night was darker than usual, the sky blanketed in thick clouds that blocked the moonlight. It made everything feel even more suffocating, as though the darkness itself was waiting for me to make a mistake. As I stepped outside, the snow crunched beneath my boots, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The trees loomed around me, tall and silent, their branches bent under the weight of the snow. For a moment, it felt like the entire forest was watching me. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. There was no turning back now. I wasn't just a researcher in a remote outpost anymore. I was a prisoner in a cage of rules that I had no power to break. And as an investigator into the deep and dark places of the world, I knew one thing for sure. Trespassing in a place like this, it wasn't just dangerous, it was a death sentence. I stepped into the woods, the path barely visible beneath the thick snow. The air was freezing, the wind howling faintly through the trees. I kept my eyes fixed ahead, my senses sharp, expecting the worst. The forest around me was completely still. No sounds of animals, no wind rustling through the branches, nothing. It felt as if the entire world had gone silent, waiting for something to happen. I moved deeper into the woods, each step making my heartbeat thud louder in my chest. I kept waiting for something, anything, to happen. A snap of a branch, a rustle in the underbrush, anything to signal that I wasn't completely alone out here. But nothing came. The silence was unbearable, pressing in on me from all sides. The further I walked, the colder the air seemed to get, as if I were walking into something much darker, much older than just the forest. My breath came out in misty clouds, and I could feel my fingers freezing, my skin growing numb with the cold. But I pressed on, my mind focused solely on the idea that I had to see this thing for myself. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. At first, I thought it was just another shadow in the darkness, but as I turned to face it, my blood ran cold. The shape was too tall, too thin, its limbs unnaturally long and jerky. It moved like it was part of the darkness itself, blending into the shadows as if it didn't belong in the world of the living. I froze, my body locked in place as the creature stepped into view. It wasn't like any animal I'd ever seen. It had the shape of a person, but it wasn't human. Its body was elongated, thin to the point of being skeletal. Its arms stretched far beyond the length of any normal creature. Its head was oddly shaped with no real features, just a dark, gaping hole where its eyes should have been. It seemed to move without sound, gliding through the snow like a shadow. The only thing I could hear was the soft, labored breath it exhaled, a sound that made my blood turn to ice. I wanted to run. My mind screamed for me to turn and escape, but my legs refused to move. I stood there, paralyzed as the creature slowly stepped closer, its body swaying slightly in the windless air. Its head tilted to one side, like it was studying me, watching me with unseen eyes. I don't know how long I stood there just staring at it. My heart hammered in my chest, and every instinct I had screamed to get away, to go back to the safety of the outpost. But something inside me clicked. The rules were never meant to protect us. They were meant to contain it. The creature had been here long before any of us. And now, it was only a matter of time before it realized I was breaking the rules, just like the others had. But there was one thing I couldn't ignore. One thing that gnawed at me harder than anything else. If the creature had been here all this time, why hadn't anyone been able to leave? Why hadn't anyone told the truth? I knew the answer, of course. The rules were a cover, but the deeper I dug, the more dangerous my questions became.